I'm in a New York state of mind.
New York, New York.
New York City is the place where they said, hey, babe, take a walk on the wild side.
Bad boys, what you want, what you want, what you gonna do?
If it's between you and some poor bastard whose wife you're gonna turn into a widow, brother, you are going down.
532, you're assigned to a vandalism case that happened.
A man who will keep his head, not get rattled under fire.
All points bulletin for the Bo Dietl Show on the Gas Digital Network. Here's your host, Bo Dietl.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome on board. You know what this is all about? This is finally about a vehicle that I can tell facts and I can tell the truth, and I don't have to be politically correct. You know, I just came off a run for mayor of New York City against Big Bird de Blasio. Every corner, every issue, everything they attacked me on, political correctness. But on this podcast, I think we're going to bring people into the real world, the facts, and not the fiction. This is not movie land. This is true story. I grew up in Ozone Park. Yes, same place as John Gotti grew up, Joey Scopel. My life in New York City was growing up with what they used to call wise guys. And we have to go back a little bit ways back. My dad was born in Germany. My mother's Sicilian. Very, very tough father I had. Work ethics were pounded into my head all the time about you have to work hard. Success means hard work. And that was what my father pounded into me. And he did pound it into me with his fist, and he also pounded it into me when he told me I had to be home at 8:30 at night. If it was 8:35, the strap would come off and he'd belt the butts my ass off. My whole life started again in Richmond Hill, Ozone Park area of Queens. When I grew up in 101st Avenue. It was called Jerome Avenue. And I'll never forget when I was around 12 years old, I used to go up to the corner. The corner was kind of near where the Bergen Hunt Club, was out there. And John Gotti had just come into the neighborhood. And there was the Scopo family. Ralph Scopo was my friend. He was a little older than me, 2 years older than me, but a lot of people didn't realize in our Italian neighborhood in Ozone Park, we had a lot of problems with heroin. I know personally 10 of my friends I grew up in Ozone Park who died of heroin overdose. I can remember being on the railroad tracks on 99th Street where the old trestle was holding Ralphie Scopo's arm with a strap as he put a eyedropper with a syringe into his arm, shooting heroin. Now, again, 12 years old, 13 years old. At that time, I was very involved with physical fitness. We had the John F. Kennedy physical fitness thing. My day consisted of about 3 to 4 hours of pull-ups, push-ups, squat thrusts, sit-ups, and run. So I was in really good shape. So when I used to hang around with these guys, all these wise guys, I started going to Ralphie Scopo's father's house over there on 106th Street and Atlantic Avenue. A lot of people don't understand who Ralphie Scopo was, the father. He was the guy who was in charge of all the construction unions in New York City to the 5 crime families. I only learned about this subsequently later in life. I used to look at Ralphie Scopo as the second father. Tough guy. So I used to go over to his house on Thursday night. We would have broccoli rabe and we would have veal cutlets. I used to come up to the house. The father took a liking to me because I think I was one of the only kids that wasn't shooting heroin at that time. So he used to like me to hang around with his son. Eventually, I met his brother, Joey Scopo, who was very good friends with John Gotti. Now, Joey Scopo, hands down, was the toughest guy I ever met. So I started hanging around on the corner, but I would have to get home. They used to go over to the airport. And they say, come on, Bo, ain't you going? We're going to go to the airport. We're going to do some shopping. And I said, no, my father got to get me home at 8:30. Otherwise, my father would beat the living shit out of me, which he used to do regular. If I talked back to my mom or something, came off the buckle and he used to beat me up. But you know what? He taught me one thing. And I'll never forget when I wrote the book, One Tough Cop. And I said to my father, thank you, who I only got to know after I became a man. That was what it was all about. He beat into me respect loyalty, and honesty. And that's the character that I have in my life today. I try to teach my children, but there's only one thing missing. I don't put my hands on my children. And what happens then is they would go to the airport and they were hijacking trucks and they were stealing stuff, burglarizing stuff, cargo. But I wasn't around that because my dad wanted me home. So let's fast forward. All of a sudden now I'm in high school. I'm a city champion on the high bar, parallel bars, physical fitness team. We were number one in the nation, and I was the number one individual. So I was in physically great strength. 17 years of age, I graduate high school, and I always wanted to just be a gym teacher. I used to do the giant swings and the flyaways and all that in gymnastics. I threw the shot put. I ran a mile. I ran cross country. But my big thing was this physical fitness, these 5 things. I was up to about 175 push-ups, 40 pull-ups. I was in great shape. So I was a tough kid on the streets. But one thing, so I'm 17 years old. I'm sitting in Howard Beach in a Jetburger, and I'll never forget it. I borrowed my friend's little MG, little sports car, and I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden these gang of guys come around the car, and the kid I grew up with, Ronnie Strapone, tough kid, he goes in and gets a couple of hamburgers. I'm sitting there. So I tell these guys, they're sitting on the car. It's an MG. It's a beautiful car. I said, get the fuck off the car. No one says something. They were all drunk. Next thing I know is I get hit. I didn't know what he hit me with, a bat. Turns out I think he hit me with brass knuckles. He hit me in my face, and I jumped out of the car. Ronnie came out. I break the antenna off with another car, and we're swinging it. We're fighting. All of a sudden, they see me bleeding. They run away. All of a sudden, I go to Jamaica Hospital. They stitch me up. So Ronnie says to me, we're going back. We're looking for these guys. I go back to the corner, and nobody's on the corner. That's where they all hung out, my guys. We go back. 3 o'clock in the morning, Ronnie said, that's the guy that hit you. Now, he's walking down a block with a girl. I said, Ronnie, I don't remember. He said, that's the fucking guy. So he takes a tire iron, and he jumps out of the car, and he runs behind him. He whacks him on the back of the head. A couple of guys. Guy goes down. He chases. He's out of there. Next thing is I said, Ronnie, you sure that was the right guy? He goes, that's the fucking guy. Turns out his name is Johnny Sears. Now, Johnny Sears was a professional boxer. So now we go back to the corner, and Ralphie and Joey Scopo says to me, you had a problem over there. Word came back. They want to meet you. This kid wants to meet you under the old wooden bridge in Howard Beach, and he wants to fight you. But we found out he ain't going to fight you. He's involved with this motorcycle gang called the Pagans, and they're going to kill you, Bo. So I said, fuck him. I want to fight this guy. This guy sucker punched me. Fuck him. I want to go there. Let's do it. He goes, you're not going to do nothing. They're going to kill you. So it was a Saturday morning, 2 weeks later, and I'll never forget, Joey Scopo had a British green Fleetwood Cadillac 4-door car. So he gets me in the car. He goes, we're going to Howard Beach. We're going to the old wooden bridge. Now, the old wooden bridge was about 10, 12 foot high. It would open up for boats going in and out of Howard Beach. So I get into the car. Next stop is 106th Street and Atlantic Avenue. Joey Scopo gets out. He goes upstairs, comes down with a paper bag, 238 revolvers. I'm sitting in the back seat. On one side of me is Johnny Gotti. On the other side is Dennis Green. Joey Scopo's driving, and Foxy of New Lots was sitting in the passenger seat. Tough guy, Foxy, too. So we pull up to the old bridge. We're about a half a block away. All of a sudden, out from under the old wooden bridge comes these long-haired guys with beards and dirty-looking guys, machete. One guy had a machete. And Joey Scopo gets out with Foxy. I stay back with Johnny Gotti and Dennis Green. And the next thing's all I could see was Joey Scopo and Foxy of New Lots beating the living shit out of about 10 of these guys. One of the guys actually went off the bridge into the water. Next thing is the police cars, the old green and white police car comes, and they go into the little toll booth house. Next thing, Joey comes walking back and gets in the car with Foxy, Johnny Gotti, and then we drive back to the old corner, and it turns out that they were laying for me there, and they were going to kill me. So in reality, John Gotti, Joey Scopo, and Foxy and Dennis Green saved my life as far as that day, because there was no doubt in my mind I was going to get killed. Fast forward, now all I wanted to do was be a gym teacher. But when I graduated high school, I was physically great shape, but my marks academically weren't too good. I graduated with a general diploma. I wanted to go to Springfield College and be a gym teacher. My marks weren't high enough. So I go see Ralphie Scopo at the club. Ralphie Scopo says, hey, Bo, you know what? Why don't you become a laborer, concrete laborer? You make good money. Go see Sammy the Weasel on 33rd Street. That was his nickname. And Lexington Avenue, tell him I sent you. Ralphie Scopo said, yeah, go there. Now I become a concrete laborer. It was like kind of being a slave. And I worked hard. I was making good money. I ended up buying a Corvette, a brand new 1968 Corvette. And I was driving around. I was living the life. I didn't really understand what in the hell was going on. Now, the last thing I ever wanted to do is become a friggin' cop. I didn't like cops because my only interaction was this Irish guy. I still got my knees. We were sitting in a park after dark, and the guy beat the living shit out of me with a nightstick on my knees. I limped home. I told my father, nothing happened to me. He starts beating me up. He says, what happened? And as soon as I said the cop hit me with the nightstick, that was the worst thing I ever did because he beat me again. And I learned one thing, never to tell my father if I had any interaction with the police. So I took this police test when I was 15. Only by a goof. I came up on a Saturday afternoon. I said, where is everybody? They said, oh, it's an open enrollment walk-in test for cops. I said, who wants to be a fucking cop? I go in there, take the test. It was a moron test. They show you a clock. What time is it? So I ended up taking that test. So now let's fast forward. I'm working as a laborer, construction laborer, 6A. I become a union member, and I go to the club on 101st Avenue, and Ralphie Sr. is there, and Joey Scope, and he goes, Ralphie says, you know, they got this building going up over downtown. It's called the World Trade Center, Tower A, Tower B. I could get you on a permit with Local 40, I think it was, as an iron worker, and you'll make a lot more money. Go see Black Mike, another nickname, all these little nicknames. So I go over see Black Mike, and I start working as an iron worker. It's what they call a connector, where you have a stud wrench, you put the girders together, and then they have a bolt-up gang, put them hydraulically bolted up, and then they spot welded. And I started working on the World Trade Center. Down there, construction, I saw 4 people go off the buildings, die. So, I mean, it was very dangerous. They didn't have OSHA. You know, today they got OSHA, they got belts, safety belts. Back then, you had no safety belts. You just went by a wing and a prayer. My whole life then was working hard. So I saw, like I said, 4 people die. But my life didn't feel complete working as a construction worker. I saw guys who were 30, looked like they were 40, and I wanted more in life. So now they called me for the cops. The third time they said, if you don't take this cop thing, you're going to be finished, and you're not going to be able to you'll be knocked off the list. So I go to the academy, and I'm on the roof in a gray uniform, no gun, no badge. And this is how it all started. You call it, I don't know if you say epiphany, but something happened, like a light went off in my life. I look off the roof of the academy, and I see a guy going up a fire escape, and he wasn't a fireman. It was a burglar, and just light went off. I run off the roof. My sergeant's yelling, Deedle, where you going? I jump up on the fire escape. I climb to into the apartment, and it was summertime. It's hot, and people are pointing. The guy ran out of the apartment. I chase him about 5 blocks. I tackle him, get him in a headlock. He ended up stealing 2 rings out of the apartment. And I tell you the honest truth, that was like the light that went off that I could help people. I hate bullies, and I love to help people. And my career went on and on and on. I became one of the original decoys where I volunteered to be mugged. I was mugged over 500 times. I was stabbed. I was shot at. I had a great career. I eventually became a homicide detective. Great career. But my life didn't stop there. My life touched upon the movies, Goodfellas, all about the guys I grew up with, Paulie Verio, Henry Hill, and also Jimmy Burke, who owned the bar on Lefferts Boulevard. And every one of these stories, I could talk about it for hours about each one of the stories. Then I opened the business. I ran for United States Congress in 86. I wrote 3 books. I've been involved in at least 30 movies and TV shows, Wolf of Wall Street, Goodfellas, Vinyl. on and on. We just finished a movie called The Irishman with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino and Joe Pesci, and it's coming out in 19. Yeah, right, Bo. How about 2019? It's coming out, but my life has just been so spectacular to touch upon everything. I really enjoyed running for mayor, but again, the problem with running for mayor is politically correctness. And I'm so happy to be here today about political correctness. Tonight we have the premiere of John Gotti's new movie. And, you know, to talk about John Gotti and all that, I don't know him from his business. And one of the things that I make sure I didn't do is when I was a detective, I refused to work in organized crime. I worked on the streets of New York. I went after Nicky Barnes, his bodyguards, his drug dealers up in Harlem. I just felt as though it wouldn't be right for me, who met all these guys. And one of the things when I was working construction, I used to drive Ralphie Scope around. And I used to drive Ralphie Scope up to East Harlem, up by Rayo's, and you had a place called the Colonial where Fat Tony Salerno was there. And I met these guys when I was 19, 20. Then when I became a cop, that was my area up there, and Fat Tony Salerno used to call me Bo the Cop. Everybody called me Bo the Cop. I never was asked to do anything illegal with any of them. Matter of fact, on an FBI wiretap, Fat Tony Salerno is picked up saying, "You never asked this fucking Bo Deedle or his fucking Irish partner." You know, Tommy Colleran, who's dead now, was one of the great detectives that worked with me. He was my partner. But they kind of insulated me from being involved. So then, you know, when I was a New York City cop, I used to go back to the social club on 101st Avenue, and then Ralphie, the old man, says to me, "Bo, you shouldn't come here anymore." I said, "Shouldn't come here anymore? Why?" He was like a second father to me. He goes, "You don't even understand what we do or what this thing's all about." All I know is that I love you like a father, and, you know, for you to say I can't come back here, that's wrong. He goes, you'll understand one day. And then I started doing my own little background, and I found out about they were with the Colombo crew. He was the bagman for all 5 crime families. I'm not going to sit here and say I didn't know what was going on. Once I became a cop, I knew exactly what was going on, but I stayed far away. But I had a respect. I had a respect by all organized crime guys in the sense that I was Bo the Cop. When the nun got raped in East Harlem in 1981, where they carved 27 crosses, I got a call to the Colonial, to Fat Tony Salerno, who was head of the Genovese family. And he calls me and he had a cigar in his mouth. He goes, "Hey, fucking Bo, you and your fucking Irish partner over there, what are you doing about this nun that got raped in the common?" I said, "Tony, they got 200 detectives. We're not involved with this." He goes, "That's bullshit. You guys are locking up all these scumbags around here. Get involved." So I asked for 3 days to work on that case with Tommy, my captain, Fortunato. We were locking everybody up. Robbery guys, murder suspects. We were on a roll. We got involved, and that's a whole nother story that we'll have one podcast, how we broke that case. But Tom Colleran and myself, 2 detectives, were the ones that locked up one of these scumbags in Chicago and one in New York. And I was on such a roll as a detective. Palm Sunday Massacre, largest mass murder in New York history. 10 dead, 2 adults, 8 children under the age of 12. Palm Sunday Massacre. Yeah, Christopher Thomas, that's the same scumbag that just got out of jail, killing 10 people. He just walked out. He walked out of jail. That just shows you what I have to put the taste in my mouth. Herman Bell, this other creep that killed 2 cops. And they're just coming out of jail faster and faster. My life has touched upon every one of these issues. Goodfellas, right involved. I end up locking up Jimmy Burke on 2 murders, and he was a friend of mine, but when I became a homicide detective, it wasn't personal. It was one of the rats gave him up, and the DA calls me up and says, "Bo, you got to fly to Allenwood, get Jimmy Burke, bring him back." We came back. We were on a 2-prop plane. We had these little bottles of alcohol. I didn't put handcuffs. I knew Jimmy Burke. We were drunk when we landed at LaGuardia. My lieutenant says, "Bo, you're drunk. Your prisoner's drunk. Your partner's drunk." I said, "Yeah, that's Jimmy Burke. He's a good guy." But these are things that today, if we ever did anything that I did back then, they'd be locking my ass up. And I prayed to God and I thank God they didn't have cell phone cameras. My life has been such an interesting life. Get a call from Dick Grosso, head of the New York Stock Exchange. Bo, go meet this guy, Jordan Belfort, Stratton Oakmont. Whole nother story. I save him from getting shaken down by the wise guys, and hence Wolf of Wall Street. And then Martin Scorsese's filming that. He says, Bo, we got this part for Bo Dietl. Who do you think's going to play him? I says, who's going to play him? I'm fucking playing myself. And I'm in a major movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the great actors, and the Wolf of Wall Street's there. Goodfellas is there. And I'm in that, and on and on and on. I just had a wonderful life. And you know what? You've been with me for a while, Carlo. You know about my life and my reputation. You know, I'd love you to ask me any questions you want.
Okay, Bo. So you gave a lot of information there, and you told us a lot about your life and growing up in Queens, and I think you touched on how it was. So in Ozone Park in the 60s, it seems like there wasn't a lot of opportunity for people, and people were turning to drugs and crime, and there was truck hijackings, and so you were able to stay away from that because you were involved in physical fitness and you had a good family, father supporting you and keeping you in the straight and narrow. So when you first met John Gotti, when he helped you out with that situation with the motorcycle gang, how did you see him? What did you see him as? Well,
I first met him when I was 12 years old. We had a feast up there on 99th Street off 101st Avenue, not Our Lady Mount Carmel. It was a feast we used to have every summer up there. And I'll never forget, I was up there and I saw Joey Scopo and John Gotti walking through the feast. And they were like, now Joey Scopo was about 6'3". He was eventually machine gunned down in the Colombo War. But he's like about 6'2", 6'3", toughest motherfucker you ever met in your life. He was walking down there with Johnny Gotti, and that was the first time I met Johnny Gotti, and Joey said, hey, Bo, meet Johnny Gotti. And I wasn't a cop then. I was just a kid. And hence then, as I grew up, I used to hang around the corner there, and I used to get into, my father didn't know it, otherwise he would have killed me, but I used to get into fights all the time, and not stabbing people. I mean, punching guys out, and I was a tough kid, and the worst thing is the world. The only person I ever feared was one person, my father. And I say that to this day. I went after everybody. Major organized crime guys, wise guys, gang members, Nicky Bonds. I got locked in a cell once with Nicky Bonds' 2 bodyguards, and I made believe I was a prisoner, and all of a sudden they didn't want to get their Polaroid pictures taken. They had killed a Mount Vernon cop, and now they had a shootout, and I was out decoying, so I had all my makeup on. They didn't know I was a cop. And I said, what are they yelling about? They go, they don't want their Polaroid taken. I said, put me in the fucking cell. I go in the cell, the guy gets up, I bump into him. Next thing, I used to carry brass knuckles too. The guy gets up to hit me, I lay him out. The brother I hit with the chair, all of a sudden, little do I know, Mickey Moran is in the back room. He comes out and he blackjacks me 6 times. He thought I was a prisoner. So I'm laying in the gurney. They put me in the back of a police car. I'll never forget the feeling of hot blood going down my back. They rushed me to Metropolitan Hospital. I'm laying on the gurney, and the 2 other guys I put in the hospital laying on the next gurneys. I never gave up Mickey Moran. I said I fell down the stairs. Now, everything we talk about, there's no murder involved, so statute of limitations are long gone. That's all I got to tell you. I never killed anybody that I know of or intentionally killed anybody, but my point is anything I talk about now is the truth. There's no murder involved. I never killed nobody. Could I have killed? Here, look at my hand here. Guy stabbed me through my hand. He escaped from Attica, and he's an escaped murderer. And I was decoying. He robs me. My lieutenant's yelling, shoot him. He's got a big kitchen knife. And I yell at him. I said, hey, jump on him. And like somebody was in back of him. He turns his head. I jump on top of him. I start beating the living shit out of him. Take the knife where he stabs me. The lieutenant's yelling, shoot him. I never shot nobody. Guy actually fired at me 5 times, 20 feet away with a revolver. He misses me. He draws the gun down, and he goes, you got me. I says, motherfucker, got you? You just tried to kill me. Your day began. He ended up in the hospital. But you want to know something? It was a different world out there. Today, these poor cops are out there. They got cell phones. Everything they do, they film the second half. It's very difficult. You know, Carlo?
I do. And I think a lot of people that are listening might not understand how New York was in that day, and they don't understand the amount of crime. And what was it like? It seems like it was a constant battlefield.
The 70s, we used to have over 2,000 murders a year. robberies, well, 500,000 robberies. I mean, real robberies, and the gangs are out there. You could go up to Harlem. You go up to Harlem now. I love going to Harlem now. It's so different. Years ago, it used to be 55-gallon drums on 8th Avenue. Every 3 of them on every block with fires going in the night, shootings all over the place. Drug dealing was so prevalent. It's a different world. People can't have to realize. I love the idea about community policing, about cops being friendly with the community. But, it becomes like an overkill because cops now are out there. They don't want to get involved. It seems like the ones that are active. I got 40 civilian complaints. Yeah, 40 civilian complaints. Never founded any one of them as far as being founded. But you know what? I locked up thousands of people. When you're locking people up, they don't go by the Marcus of Queensberry rules. Put your hands behind you. Imagine trying to handcuff a guy who just got out of jail after 15 years, built like a brick shit house. You try to put cuffs. You even try to put cuffs on a female by yourself. It's very, very difficult. And you know what? You got to use necessary force to effect the arrest. And I always tell young cops, if you hit somebody, we used to have these big radios. I used to smash guys in the head when I was fighting with them. And I used to actually say in the grand jury, well, what'd you hit him with? I hit him with my radio until I could get handcuffed. You want to know something? All my partners went home. Nobody died. I've taken hundreds of guns off the street. And like I said, that one incident where the guy fired at me 5 times, I didn't have a vest on. Only God steered those bullets from not hitting me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. But yet, when I was investigating the Palm Sunday massacre, one of the things that always come to mind, when we were investigating the murder of 10 people, I went to this apartment looking for a witness. 3 little black kids were there, 7 years old, no clothes on. They had defecation all over them. I went in there. They were left alone by their foster mother. I opened up the refrigerator. There was no food in there. I waited for that mother. My lieutenant was calling me, Deedle, 10-2, get back to the station house, right? I waited for the mother. I said, I'll be back here every week. I said, if these kids ain't cleaned up and you got food in that refrigerator, I said, I'm taking these kids away. So I go back to the squad room, the detective squad. My lieutenant screaming at me, where the fuck were you, Bo? I said, look, there was 3 kids left. He goes, you're investigating the largest mass murder in New York history. You're worried about 3 fucking kids. I said, that's the problem. That's the fucking problem, because these kids will never forget that I cared about them.
Yeah, so that's really good for the community policing. And getting back to community, so you laid out this whole environment in the 60s and 70s. Crime is rampant in New York. There's heroin problems in the neighborhood. How were wise guys a part of that? Because it seems like when a lot of people talk about the old neighborhood, that the wise guys, the mafia guys, took care of the neighborhood. They kept crime out. You gave the story of Ralph Scopo. He helped you with a job. They helped people. So what was that kind of scenario?
Well, in the community, Ralph Scopo, the father, was head of all the construction unions. He gave all, he got all the money, and you had 5 crime families. Everyone knows about it. You had the Gambinos, the Colombos, and he was a Colombo member, the Genovese, the Lucchese, and the Bonanno. But he was the guy who was like, I call him the bag man. I only learned these things subsequently because in 1985 I retired, and leads into another thing with John Gotti. I retired from the police department, I think February 12th, 1985, but yet a little scumbag writer, Murray Weiss, puts me on the cover of the the New York Post, I believe it was. Bo Dietl, one of 11 cops involved with drug dealing and murder. Now, you look into it, the last paragraph, this guy, John Elite, was a witness against John Gotti Jr. I've never met him in my life. I don't even know who the fuck he was. So the FBI agents all the time loved to throw my name in. My best friend back then was Jim Fox, the assistant director. When I ran for United States Congress, Jim Fox, I was involved with him as far as he was one of my friends along with Ray Kelly. We used to go out to dinner and all that. But now, fast forward, this Elite comes out. He murdered 11 people. They're giving him immunity. Same bullshit. Next thing is he goes, the FBI agent, well, what about Bo Dietl? Oh, yeah, I saw him taking money when he was a detective from Richard Gotti at a car wash in 1986. One fucking problem. I retired in 1985 February. But yet Murray Weiss knew I was retired, but yet they put it. I said, why would you do that? Oh, Bo, your name sells fucking papers. I never got an apology. I told the U.S. attorney when Gotti Jr. was on trial, if this scumbag can lie about me, he can lie about anything. This elite guy that came out, none of the jurors believed anything he said about John Jr. Gotti. I don't know for the fact what the story is there, but those jurors knew that this guy was a lying scumbag. And all of a sudden, when we go and it comes out in the papers, it also comes out about my sergeant, Joe Coffey, famous Joe Coffey, famous gangster guy. Now, he worked in organized crime. He was my sergeant on the streets of the 2-5 anti-crime. Then he eventually went into organized crime. I was not involved with that. The same scumbag said Joe Coffey was taking money, but Joe Coffey was the one that locked up Gotti. Now, either he is taking money from Gotti or he's locking them up, and he locked them up. So my point is that this is what I have to deal with. Even when I run for mayor, when I look at a judge that looked very similar to the mayor's wife, not on a racial thing, and I use it as an example. If I went to a divorce court and I looked at the judge, and the judge looks like my ex-wife, I said to my lawyer, we got a problem. Same thing, I walk into the Supreme Court to try to get on the Democratic Party. I go to my lawyer, man, we got a problem. Look at the judge. It looks like the mayor's wife, meaning they looked exactly similar. But no, I'm a racist. That was a racist. Bullshit. Too much fucking political correctness. At no point did I look at her black or white or anything. She looked very similar. I showed the comparison, but yet that tagged along with me that I was a racist all along during the whole campaign. The fact that my company does investigations on sexual harassment. I don't like women because I do investigations. I do investigations for women and for corporations, and I find out the truth, the facts. Everyone is not fucking guilty out there. And you know what? You have a right to defense. That's what our whole life is about.
Yeah, so the media comes up with the story first, and then they want to sell papers, and they sensationalize it. We know that. And so I think another thing that we should touch on, since this Gotti movie is coming out, a lot of people are anxious to see it. And a lot of people have their own ideas about John Gotti from movies, documentaries, books, what have you. And it seems like anyone that lived in New York in the 1980s saw Gotti as this larger-than-life figure. He would give $100 bills out. He would shake hands with everybody. So being that you knew him from the 60s, how did he come to rise to that larger-than-life figure?
I think it was a respect factor. And you want to know something similar to President Trump? You know, people who are real, like real people. Is President Trump correct all the time? He's a narcissist. He says a couple of lies, but yet he's doing stuff. Like when John Gotti was there, you didn't see anybody. Somebody robbed somebody in our neighborhood in Ozone Park. You didn't have to call the cops. All of a sudden, they would never come back there. They'd catch a beat and they'd never come back there. And you never had the problem. Kids got in a little trouble over there. Sometimes the families would go to the club and talk to John. John was there. Also with Ralph Scopo, the father. How many hundreds of people he put to work in construction. And if you had a problem, it was like someone to listen. John Gotti had a heart of gold. He was a bit of a gambler, too. A lot of people don't know he was a major gambler. He made a lot of money, and he bet a lot of money, too. But I tell you, I hugged John Gotti Jr. the other day. We're on 86th Street with Travolta in Brooklyn the other day. And I said, you know what? I loved your father very much. And I'll say it out loud. And anybody that doesn't fucking like it, they can kiss my ass. I loved John Gotti. Saved my life. I really believe he did what Joey Scopo saved my life. And never did anything wrong to me. And John Gotti Jr., I knew as a kid. I know Victoria growing up and all that. I just feel as though, you know, just look at their poor family. Look what they did to John Gotti. They wouldn't do all these fucking terrorists that they got running around there. They wouldn't let these fucking terrorists eat away with that cancer. Did you see the last photographs of John Gotti? They let that cancer just eat him away. They wouldn't give him proper medical treatment. That fucking sucks. But yet we kiss the fucking asses of terrorists that want to see us dead. You want to know something? I wish John Gotti was alive, and I wish he was still around, because he should run for mayor of New York City.
Do you think that's why the FBI and the Justice Department went after him so hard? Is it because he was beloved and he cut this figure as this swaggering guy with the Brioni suits, fresh haircut, and he kind of, he beat them 3 times. Is that why?
Well, they spent hundreds of millions of dollars to get Gotti and his son. The government. I wish they spent some of that money to look after these fucking terrorists that they knew about when they were taking flying lessons and all that. They should have expelled a little of that energy on these terrorists. The thing with John Gotti and the other, they kept it mostly amongst themselves. Their business was their business. Is it right? No. I don't stand up for anybody hurting anybody, but I look at all sides of it. Was John Gotti the worst guy in the world, or was he as bad as these terrorists that were willing to kill themselves and blow themselves up and run buildings, 3,000 people dead? I mean, in reality, he was a person was larger than life because he beat these cases. No one could stand it. They were running cases that didn't even have the case together. All they wanted to do is take them down. And John Gotti Jr. is a very lucky young man, and thank God that they had the worst fucking witness in the world, this guy Elite. When he was the witness, I knew there wasn't going to be a conviction because he's such a fucking liar. He lied about me personally. So anything he says after that, I have no credence with.
So maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but the story I hear is that Elite was he fled to Brazil and he was in some shithole prison there, and it seems like he would say anything to get out of there. And, he was just making up stories just to get back to America.
Well, look, you got Elite, and then you got my little friend Sammy Gravano, who I knew. I didn't like it. He didn't like me. He used to call, what the fuck is the cop around here? I used to have dinner when he had the Denoy restaurant, Johnny Gotti, over on York Avenue. And I had dinner with him sometimes, just after I was retired. Hey, I have a right to have dinner with whoever the fuck I want to have. And I would go over there, and I was waiting for Johnny at the bar, and Sammy was there, and he says to the bartender, why is the fucking cop here? I say, fuck you back. And went back and forth. It was almost going to be a little fisticuffs, but all of a sudden Johnny come in, he goes, oh, that's Bo the cop, Sammy. And make a long story short, I had a lot of respect for Gotti because of what he was able to do. I'm an Italian American. I was proud that they had a guy that was so sharp like that. And you know what? He was not maybe super smart in some ways, because it was eventually going to catch up to him, because he made the FBI look like jerks every time he walked out of court, and you knew they were sharpening their pencils to take him down. He was the number one target. And it's just funny, Jim Fox was the assistant director that eventually took him down. Jim Fox was my best friend. I mean, I say it lightly. We lost him long ago, but Jim Fox, it was just funny. I knew John Gotti, I know Jim Fox, and never the twink no one ever asked me for anything. Again, this was picked up on FBI wiretaps. Fat Tony telling his guys, don't you ever ask that Bo the cop or the Irish fuck. Don't ever even ask for a plate check. And this is documentation through the FBI. And I was like protected because I was never asked to do anything. Would I ever ran a plate? Maybe. I was never asked. So when anybody makes allegations that I did something wrong or was involved with organized crime, it pisses me fucking off. You know what I had? I had respect from people. When that nun got raped in a convent and they carved 27 crosses in her, they put a broom into her vagina and they threw her down the stairs, they defecated on her, pissed on her, and left her for dead. My partner, Tommy Collar, and I went on our own. We were hurled all over the city. We'd walk into Jimmy Weston's. We'd walk into the Adam's Apple, Rayo's. People would stand up and clap. You know why we did it? Not for wise guys. We did it because that had to be done, and it was right. But we gained a lot of respect from that.
Yeah, because you were protecting the city. So all residents of the city would definitely commend you for locking up people that are gonna cause chaos and destruction. So I think that you were able to get mutual respect from these organized crime figures, and as well as the people of the city of New York.
Well, I didn't want to be a hypocrite, Gullo, so I was asked to work in organized crime. I said, I can't. Put me in Harlem, put me in the worst areas of New York where people are getting robbed. When I used to do decoys, I had theatrical makeup. I used to use dry blood, and I actually would put it all over my hands and my face so I'd look more Hispanic than anything, so I'd fit. They said to me, Bo, you're going to decoy in Harlem and East Harlem? I said, yeah. And I went up there, and I was mugged hundreds of times up there. Again, I was afraid of nothing. When I was a cop and a detective, I used to go through the door. We didn't call for emergency service. We'd take the door down. We'd go in. In retrospect, was it smart? No, but obviously I had a guardian angel and God looked over me. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here today. There's no reason for me to be alive today with what I went through, even with the iron working to the working as a decoy and volunteering for that, being mugged over 500 times, hospitalized 30 times. I mean, it's just, I've had such a wonderful life. I get so much energy out of life. You know, I was very successful. We sold the company back in 98 for $200 million, Danny Del Giorno and I. I have a security hardware, software company also. I got my private investigating company. We do major investigations, major security. I'm just one lucky fucking guy. Wrote 3 books, been in every movie, the biggest movie coming out, The Irishman. I mean, every day I say, you know what? I'm one lucky fucking guy. I just wish some of the people that passed on were around to see this success. I'm just happy, you know, when I met with Ronald Reagan, the president, when I was in the Oval Office for 15 minutes. It's a video. You just put Bo Dietl, Ronald Reagan. Everybody's welcome to watch it. That was really extraordinary. And, I got all that respect. I know every chairman of every major corporation, from Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Dick Fuld, Grasso Grano, every major person, including our president, who I have a lot of respect. Say what you want about President Donald Trump. He's doing a fucking damn good job. He's doing something. He's getting something done. Right, wrong, and different. He's getting something done. If Donald Trump wanted to be my CEO of my company today, I'd welcome to be my CEO because he gets fucking things done.
That's right. So, you know, just tying into the president, yourself, and back to Gotti. So, from the bad times of the 70s, it seems like in the 80s, there was a resurgence in New York. People were making money again. Things were happening. That's Donald Trump was doing his building back then. You were starting your business. And at that time, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's also when Gotti became boss of his.
Well, he became boss when allegedly he killed had him killed Castellano in 1985, and then he started to write. But you got to remember, there wasn't that long of a reign. I mean, to 1990, he maybe had a 5-year run, and they locked him up 3 times during a 5-year run. So he really never was able to enjoy the feeling, you know, but kind of his own fault too, by being in your face like that. People were so fucking jealous because he'd wear sharp Brioni suits, Brioni ties. He looked good. He had the cashmere coats on. He looked good. It was like, fuck you. And that kind of was his demise, too, because the fact was he was saying fuck you to the FBI, and these agents wearing their fucking men-only suits, whatever the fuck they were wearing, got, like, upset. This guy's driving around, and wherever he goes, people were cheering for him, and they hated that. But you want to know something? He was a perfect person for a perfect time, because what he showed people was that you could feel proud about living in Ozone Park, Howard Beach, growing up, and he had a lot of respect. I'll never forget when I was running for Congress back in 1986. We had our congressional office on 101st Avenue, a block from the Hunt and Fish Club. And then all of a sudden, Richard Gotti came up there and he goes, "Hey, Bo," he goes, "John said, whatever you need from us." I said, "You know what I need? Tell John, stay the fuck away from me." I said, "You got to stay far away from me." Already, the New York Times was a legend. I was Gotti's candidate for Congress, and they were going after me as it was. I said, he's got to stay far away. He goes, "Hey, you want us to hang posters or we'll rip down the Floyd Flakes posters?" I said, "No, what I want you guys to do, please just stay away." You know, the special election, people don't realize how close. It was an area that was 7-1 Democrat. I ran as a Republican. I lost that race by 2,500 votes. Last minute, Brian McCabe comes in there. And he's a white Irish guy from the Rockaways. He pulls 4,000 votes. I think of those 4,000 votes, I don't think Floyd Flake, who was black, I don't think he was going to get any of those votes, or not too many of them. And I think I would have won the congressional. And part of my master plan was my brother Al. He says, "You know what? And I thought when I first ran for Congress, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. And I went to Washington. I met Lee Atwater. And I thought Graham Rugman was a sandwich. Graham Rugman was a balanced budget amendment, then Strategic Defense Initiative. I met with Casper Weinberger. I knew everything. The New York Times ran a shitty editorial. Oh, Bo was a great detective. He doesn't know. I call up Max Frankel, the New York Times editor. I says, why wouldn't you interview me? I sat down there, put a tape recorder. 2 hours later, they end up apologizing to me in an editorial for the New York Times that I'm a very formidable candidate and do know all the issues of United States congressmen. And I lost by 2,500 votes. 4,000 was pulled in by the third candidate. And mysteriously, he becomes the chief of staff for Floyd Flake, who beat me for United States Congress. I started to learn about politics. Politics are the lowest lying degenerates in the world. They'll stab you in the back. I ran for mayor. I learned a lot. We'll have a podcast of my mayor run, and you'll see what my heart and soul. I wasted my insights for 14 fucking months trying to be the mayor of this city. But you want to know, if I became mayor, things wouldn't have been right. When he passed the law about you get piss all over the street, I ended up getting a bullseye, putting it on Gracie Mansion, say, let's all piss on Gracie Mansion. I talked about the housing, about the lead paint. That's all coming to fruition. I talked about the non-reported crime in our schools. Every issue I talked about, I cared about it. I cared about people. I danced in the gay pride parade. I was one of the greatest parades. I kissed more freaking guys than lesbians. I am very inclusive. Hey, if you want to screw a horse, I'm in back of you, baby. As long as you don't hurt anybody, I'm open for everything. Gay pride, yeah, I think it's great pride. I have no problem. Gays, lesbians, trisexual, try everything. I don't give a fuck. My whole thing is people, as long as you don't hurt somebody, you should be able to do what you want to do. Absolutely. I'm a libertarian.
Okay, that's a good way to describe it. So we're getting back to Gotti and his perception in the media. So a lot of people have these misconceptions. What would you say to people that just know about John Gotti from the movies and TV shows and documentaries and stuff like that? Once you retired and once he was more of a public figure in New York, everyone knows that he was always at Regine's and nightclubs and restaurants and Little Italy. And how was your perception? Kind of as an insider, outsider, looking at how he was received in these restaurants and nightclubs. And
you know what it was like when he was, and I've been to Regine's with him many times, La Camellia on 58th Street, I think it was. And when John Gotti walked in, it was so fucking cool. I mean, walked in, the whole attention went to him, and he says hello to everybody, very congenial to everybody, and he was just like a rock star. John Gotti was a rock star, and there was no doubts about it, and how he conducted himself as a gentleman to ladies, respectful, and it reminded me of my friend Louis Dome. Louis Dome was with me up in Rayos. He was a wise guy, but one thing, you couldn't curse around him. When I would curse, I have a filthy mouth. He goes, watch your mouth. He goes, you don't curse when you're in this place up in Rayos. And my dear friend Frankie Pellegrino passed away, and all the gangsters used to be up there, and me and Tommy Collar would be on one side of the bar, and we'd buy drinks back and forth, and we had such a great rapport. So when the nun gets raped up there, it was like it had to be that me and Tommy got him. Had to be. They had 200 detectives involved. They had no fucking clue what was going on. Me and Tommy, we hit the streets. We hit these shooting galleries. I put guys' heads into toilet bowls that hadn't been flushed in 3 years. When a cop got shot up there, I hung a guy off a building never dropped one, by his fucking ankles, and he told me what I wanted. My point is, things were different, and today's cops can't even imagine, what we did. But I didn't really hurt anybody who didn't deserve to be locked up. I never flaked anybody. I never locked somebody up for something they didn't do. I got them right. And that reputation goes on the street too, where you're not shaking people down. You're not putting a gun on somebody. You're not putting drugs on somebody. No, you do something wrong, Bo got you. Tommy and Bo got you. And we went out on these streets and we tried to make these streets safer for the people, for the community people, the little kids that were running around there. That I cared about, so they wouldn't get shot with a stray fucking bullet. I took the guns off the street, and that's part of the thing with these gangs. Hey, the victims are the poor people in the neighborhoods who are becoming victims. My daughter works up in South Bronx as a school teacher. Last week, 2 people were shot dead up there. She's scared shit. She teaches elementary school. She goes out, she buys the kids with her own money. She buys them all kinds of things, all kinds of entertainment things. She takes them out. She cares about it. I cared about people in New York City. As a cop and a detective, I cared about it. And you want to know something? My heart, when I was told that I couldn't be a cop anymore, I had all the line of duty injuries. I didn't get 3/4 tax free, which I should have gotten. I was down in 9/11 too. I got lung problems. My problem is I just couldn't take the fact that they wouldn't let me back on full duty. They told me you're going to be on light duty. So normally you play the game. It's called play the game. You wait 9 months to a year. You put in for your 3/4. With all the fucking injuries I had, I could have got 3/4 on almost 10 different things. I put my papers in. I said, I'm out of here. I couldn't believe that I was going to sit behind a typewriter. That was the difference between me and a lot of other cops. They would play the game. Right now, my pension could be double tax-free. Now, I pay taxes on my fucking pension. And it pisses me off if you're not really injured and you get 3/4 tax-free. Then some of these cops go so far and get federal disability. That federal disability is for people like my partner, Mike Cherville's son, who's a quadriplegic in a fucking wheelchair. He deserves to get the help from the Social Security for disability, not a guy who can run fucking 26-mile marathons and bench press 400 fucking pounds, and now you tell me you're disabled? You're picking fucking cars up and you're disabled? That pisses me off.
So, from when you were a cop till now, obviously New York has changed tremendously.
Yeah.
What do you think caused that? What caused the decline in crime? It's not the Wild West anymore. And you were very diligent in doing your work.
Great question. I think things are the word. I believe is cyclical. What's the word?
Cyclical.
Yeah, that word. Not that good with these pronunciations, So in reality, it was the time. It was the era of the 70s and 80s. Crime was prevalent, when we had the riots, the 77 blackout riots, and then we had Kennedy being shot, and then Robert Kennedy and the Reverend King was shot, and it was tumultuous into the 70s, and people were like crazy wild. Drugs were over the top, everyone was involved with drug dealing and all that. And then it seems like as the 90s and after 9/11, people felt like they wanted their neighborhoods to become more valuable. Hey, you own buildings. You didn't want that garbage around. A lot of people went to jail, and a lot of things have changed. It's just a very funny phenomenon that occurred. And I'm very happy about the crime being down so low in New York City. And this is against all odds because these poor cops are out there and they're trying to do their job. Every time they get involved with something, they got cameras on them. The other side of it is that the community involvement. How are you going to say things when cops are communally involved? More the makeup of cops. Now I think it's about 65, 70% other than white. So, I mean, the makeup is more like what the makeup is on the streets. But the crime element, either they put them away in jail or they're dead or whatever happened. It's a funny thing that we just can't put your finger on what changed everything. Was it locking everybody up? I don't know. And that's a very good question because it's happened across the country with the exception of cities like Chicago and Baltimore with Democratic liberal fucking mayors. I mean, when I was a Fox News contributor for 12 years, I talked about it. Why isn't President Obama talking about his home city of Chicago? We had, I think, 5,000 young black Americans were killed in the last 8-9 years in Chicago. Nobody wanted to get involved. I had the answer, and the answer was used in New York. The murders were being committed by these fucking gangs. They ended up locking in New York City over 1,200 gang members. These were the ones that were killing people. They locked them all up. How about using criminal RICO, 3 or more involved in an organized effort, either murder, drug dealing, robberies? That's all you had to do. And they locked gangs of them up. And these gangs, I think, were the gangs that were doing predominantly the most of the murders. They could have done that in Chicago. All they had to do is get a couple of undercovers there, set up some federal cases, and get warrants. Take the guns off the street, hit the cars, hit the apartments. They could have straightened it out, but no one gave a fuck about the 5,000 young blacks that were killed in Chicago. All they cared about was a questionable shooting by a cop. Oh my God, the cops did bib. You got to remember, there are millions of interactions every day with law enforcement. Are there some bad cops? Abso-fucking-lutely. Cop down in Carolina that shoots that poor black man in his back 7 times. That guy should go to jail for the rest of his life. There are bad cops out there. But when you take the whole picture and see the small amount, I mean, doctors are fucking assholes. You got doctors putting prescriptions out for fucking opioids, killing fucking people. There are bad ones, but you have bad cops. But you shouldn't magnify these issues. You take the whole painting and see a beautiful painting, and at the lower bottom, maybe one little part of the painting is not right. That's the same thing in policing. You've got good and bad, but the majority of the cops out there want to help people. The problem is now cops don't want to get involved because you got Watchdog Federal. Then you got these schmucks in city council, these idiots telling cops what they did right, what they did wrong. Hey, you're not out there. You don't know what it is like for a guy to spit in your face and tell you to go fuck yourself, and you're wearing a badge. No respect. I mean, my first interaction was with the police was getting a fucking nightstick over under my knees when I was sitting in the park. I did nothing wrong, but yet my father beat me up again for getting beat up by the cop. And I learned one thing: I'd never tell Frank Xavier Deedle that a cop ever had interactions with me. And, I was very proud. He got me to see a cop, to become a cop. And he got me to see, he saw me with Ronald Reagan. And he did good.
So it seems like the media picks up on these stories and they kind of inflame it to be worse.
Yeah.
Because, when people are seeing these stories, the cops are bad and, it makes the public riled up. The cops get afraid. The politician seize on this, and it creates a bad situation.
I hate to say it, what we're on right now, podcast, social media. Right today, social media has hurt the police department tremendously because they take these incidents and they highlight the fucking incidents. And the liberal news media loves to run these fucking things, stir people up, stir people. You get people, well, I don't like the police suck, the police. Well, when you got somebody climbing in your fucking window, who are you going to call? You're going to call the police. And you want to know something? There should be more respect. One thing about being a cop, you gotta give respect. If you're right, I get pulled over sometimes. Oh, I'm sorry. By the way, I'm a retired detective. I says, I apologize. Oh, Bo Deedle, but that's not the point. The point is, always remember, the cop should be treated like he's right. Even if you're right, you have avenues you could do, but you don't disrespect the cop because he's in uniform. He's supposed to be the difference between craziness and anarchy and civilization. That's our representative. And we got to treat it that way. The bad ones, of course, they got to be dealt with. But the majority of cops out there are good and want to help people.
So, you mentioned growing up in an Italian neighborhood. There was a lot of community involvement. People knew each other. People looked out for one another. And that's kind of where you get that idea of respect. Even, you mentioned the organized crime figures showed respect to the police. Do you feel like there's something lost now in New York, that there's not the same kind of neighborhood cohesiveness? Yeah,
well, the only thing, when I ran for mayor again, here was one of my ideas. We have all these schools that are all over the city. I want, cops make shit money. What I want to do is I wanted to bring cops and open up some of these schools and neighborhoods where these could be like big brothers. Cops could be big brothers. Pay them a little overtime to interact. Kids got problems. Go see Officer Bo, Detective Bo. He'll help you out. Hey, how many of these kids don't have a father and that father figure? Let the cops be their father figure. Let them, if they have a problem, go see the Officer Bo, Detective Bo over in the school. You have a problem. You're trying to get into college. Maybe I can help you out. this is so important. It's not just to see a cop when you're getting a fucking ticket or there's an argument. You know, the one thing, and I got a lot of respect for the fire department. I was with firemen the other day on 86th Street in Brooklyn. They all love Bo. I love firemen. I love cops. They're the same thing. But the only thing is the firemen come when you need help. And they don't have that much liability to get in trouble, except if they're punching somebody out in a bar. But cops always have that liability every day when they go out to work. They are open to having a problem. And I told the fireman the other day, I should have become a fucking fireman. I would have been better off. But you know what? I would never have changed my life ever, what I did, what I accomplished. Hey, I'm the next cop that made in my lifetime over $100 million. Did I piss it away? I'll tell you a little secret. I was a gambler. I don't gamble. I mean, I haven't gambled in 7 years. I used to gamble football, casinos. I was making a lot of money. Hey, that was my prerogative. If I want to piss my money away, which I did, I didn't save for tomorrow, because when you're making a lot of money, you don't think for tomorrow. People should plan for tomorrow. If you say one thing I did wrong in my life, I dwindled lots of fortunes away gambling and the excitement, traveling private jet. I had my own private Citation 10 jet. I used to fly around boats all over the Capri and the Amalfi Coast. I lived life at 100 miles an hour. Walk into a shoe store 15 years ago, walking through John Loeb shoes. I never heard of my friend Shelley, the tailor, took me in there. I see a pair of crocodile shoes. I says, I want them with buckles. Guy go, I said, how much? $15,000. There's another pair with laces next to him. I says, give me those and give me those. If my mother, God rest her soul, ever knew I spent $30,000 for 2 pairs of shoes. But you know why I did it? Because I could. Go to Ascot Chang, buy shirts, Egyptian cotton, $500 a shirt, Brioni tires, custom-made Super 180s. Yeah, I pissed money away. But you know what? I earned it legally, and that was my prerogative to do. I paid big taxes. I'm in a 52% tax bracket now, living in New York City. Every dollar I make, they take 52% for taxes. Am I angry about that? Damn straight. When everyone's finagling all these tax shelters, I ain't got no fucking shelter. The only shelter I got is saving the money to pay my taxes. I'm angry about it. New York City, I mean, you get taxed out of your ass over here. And the poor person making under $50,000 a year and have a family, how in the fucking, that was my idea about giving people the train passes, where if you make under a certain amount of money, they should be able to take the train for free. Let's subsidize someone who's working hard. You want to work? I think we should help people that are working hard. I don't want to subsidize lazy fucking people that ain't working. Get off your ass, do a job. We got plenty of things to do. We could clean this city up, and instead of just giving people money for free, let's give them some fucking jobs to do. Start by cleaning fucking subways and the buses and start wiping down. I went to that place over there, Beijing, China. I have an office over there in fucking Chinaland for a week. They had these bullet trains, immaculate. They wipe them down, they clean them off. It was beautiful, clean. The only problem is smog. You can't fucking breathe in Beijing, China there. The food sucked, traffic sucked, smog sucked. That's why I love New York. I love New York.
All right. So, we're almost out of time here. We covered a lot of stuff and previewed a lot of topics for our next podcast. So do you have any one last story about John Gotti for us for the movie that's coming out?
Well, one of the stories that I'll always think about is in the La Camille restaurant on 58th Street when Johnny was there after he got out of jail, one of his stints. It was right. I think it was right after Castellano went down, and he made me feel good whenever I would walk into a joint. And all of a sudden, here's Bo the cop, and then we would go into Jimmy Wesson's after Tommy and I locked up the guys that raped the nun in the convent with the 27 cross. And John was there, and all of a sudden he stands up, starts clapping. Everybody in the fucking joint of Jimmy Weston's was a cool place on 54th Street. Me and Tommy, we'd walk in there, and he started clapping, and everybody started clapping after we locked these two fucking scumbags up. And that was in 1982. in 1982, and it was before Castellano went down. He wasn't the boss yet. Della Croce was still alive. He was there, Della Croce, that night. And we used to sit at the bar, me and Tommy, and we had the Westies there. And Joe Coffey, my sergeant, we used to drink there with me and Tommy and Joe Coffey. And the Westies would be in one end. We got into fisticuffs a lot of the nights over there. You know, it was fuck you. But you throw a couple of punches. Nobody locks anybody up. Throw punches. When that was another thing. When I went after the gangs in East Harlem, we had the Savage Skulls, the Seven Immortals. They were robbing all the poor Puerto Rican store owners, and they would go and they extort money. I used to hide in the back when they come in there, and I'd come out, and I would end up fucking punching these guys out, say, if you come back. I didn't lock them up. And then on the streets, I would go after the president and the vice president, all these gang members, and I would get them in a hallway, and Tommy would stay outside with the gang. I'd say, come here, tough fucking guy. Here, Tommy, take my gun. Now I'd say, it's just me and you. You ain't getting locked up, motherfucker. Take your shots. And I'd beat the living shit. Sometimes I got punched, but I wouldn't lock them up. I fought the guys. When they come out of the guys bleeding, maybe I'd be bleeding, but that's how we left it. And they could never say anything bad about me. Another guy would, I'm going to lock you. I didn't lock you up. I gave you a fucking beating. You got a shot at me too. We brought it all, and that was how respect was gathered for. And then my book, my movie, One Tough Cop. It was One Tough Cop because I was one tough cop. One real tough fucking guy on the streets, thanks to the physical being of mine. I didn't take my gun out. What happens with a cop? They take your gun out. If you're not physically ready to fight, what do you do then when you pull your gun and they tell me you stick it up your ass? What, do you shoot them? No. That's why the police department has to have people that they got to work out every fucking day. Every other day, they should be in great shape. That should be a criteria, not these fat cops, not these little tiny people that can't fight and all that. Because if you're able to fight, you don't need your fucking gun. Because you go there and say, look, I don't need my gun, motherfucker. I'm locking you up. Let's go. And I'm going to handcuff you. And you may get a couple of shots because I will use necessary force to effect the arrest. That means you do what you got to do to get handcuffs on them. You don't shoot them. You put handcuffs on them. And it was, oh, my God, it was such a wonderful life. You know what? It's a wonderful life. I had the wonderful life of being part of this great police department. And then in business, being successful the way I was in business and still am. It's a wonderful life, man. And it's out there for everyone. I tell everyone, life is not the fucking lottery. I tell my own kids, you got to work hard. You make a foundation. You build a foundation and you work hard. Success comes from working fucking hard, not sitting there being jealous about this guy, that guy. Guy's going, oh, Bo, you wrote a book. You wrote books, this. I said, why don't you go write a book? Because probably your life is much more interesting than mine. Stop being jealous and go and do it. And kids out there got to learn they can be anything they want. Today, you go for the stars. Maybe you won't reach it, but work hard. That's my ethics as far as work-related ethics.
And I'm sure a lot of people will be inspired by that, seeing what you've done. And, I think everyone's going to like this show. I hope everyone likes, reviews, and subscribes to the One Tough podcast, available on iTunes. And
I'd like them to send informations to you, Carl. Any subjects you want to talk about in the upcoming weeks and months, we're going to be around a while. Every one of these topics that I touched upon could be a whole podcast on it. The investigation of the nun rape, how we broke it. The investigation of the Palm Sunday massacre, how we broke it. These are such interesting. Even one when I'm retired, Barbara Mangiamelli, the gemologist, was killed by these two scumbag brothers, thrown into the Hudson River in a shipping crate. And then later, I was able to get these cocksuckers locked up. I love helping people. Life is about helping people. I'm a very generous guy with charities. One thing I think I'm turning away from, sorry guys, no more fucking politics. You want $10,000? You ain't getting it for politics. You want it for a charity? Yes, sir. But politics suck. Right now, I wouldn't run for dog collector. Never, ever will I run for politics again because I put my heart and soul into it, and the people spoke. They want this garbage fucking can, lying mayor criminal. They got him. They don't have Bo Dietl. But if Bo Dietl was the mayor, I think I'd be probably the first mayor that was impeached or called or whatever the fuck. So I'm happy to be here. I'm so excited about the podcast because I'm able to say what I can't say on Fox and all the news channels. You listen every week. You can send in topics. We'll talk about anything you want.
All right, you heard it from the man. You could email onetoughpodcast@gmail.com. Like, review, and subscribe to our show, and we will see you next week. Please follow Bo at Bo Deedle on Twitter and at The Real Bo Deedle on Instagram. We'll see you next time.